The start of President Trump's second term has been marked by a flurry of bold and controversial actions. These actions have sent shockwaves through the global community and ignited fierce debate within the United States. From imposing sweeping tariffs to cracking down on immigration, Trump has doubled down on his campaign promises, seemingly unconcerned with the potential for international turmoil. This essay will examine the potential risks and rewards associated with several key decisions made by the Trump administration in its second term. By analyzing the economic, political, and diplomatic ramifications of these actions, we can begin to understand their potential long-term impact on the United States and the world. Trump's supporters argue that he is a man of his word, a leader who is not afraid to challenge the status quo and fight for what he believes in. They applaud his willingness to take on China, renegotiate trade deals, and put America first. His opponents, however, see his actions as reckless, impulsive, and potentially disastrous. They argue that he is alienating allies, damaging the global economy, and eroding democratic norms. The debate over Trump's second term is not merely academic. It is a debate about the future of America's role in the world and the future of the global order itself. The stakes are high, and the outcome remains uncertain. One of the most significant and immediate impacts of Trump's second term has been the imposition of tariffs on goods from China, Canada, and Mexico. These tariffs, which are essentially taxes on imported goods, are designed to protect American industries and jobs from foreign competition. Trump argues that these tariffs are necessary to level the playing field and bring back manufacturing jobs to the United States. He believes that other countries have taken advantage of America's free trade policies for too long, and that it is time for them to pay their fair share. However, economists warn that these tariffs could have unintended consequences. They argue that tariffs will likely lead to higher prices for consumers, reduced economic growth, and job losses in industries that rely on imported goods. Furthermore, they point out that tariffs could trigger a trade war, as other countries retaliate with their own tariffs on American goods. This could further damage the global economy and harm American businesses and workers. The early signs are not encouraging. China, Canada, and Mexico have all condemned the tariffs and vowed to retaliate with tariffs of their own. This has already led to uncertainty and volatility in the global markets, as businesses and investors try to assess the potential impact of a prolonged trade war. Beyond trade, Trump's second term has also been marked by a series of controversial actions related to law enforcement and the justice system. His administration has accelerated the purge of officials seen as disloyal, firing numerous prosecutors who worked on cases related to the January 6th Capitol riot. Trump has also demanded the names of FBI agents involved in investigations into his administration, raising concerns about the politicization of law enforcement and potential intimidation tactics. Critics argue that these actions undermine the rule of law and erode public trust in the justice system. They point out that a fair and impartial justice system is essential for a functioning democracy, and that Trump's actions threaten to undermine this fundamental principle. They also express concern that Trump is using the power of the presidency to target his political opponents and shield himself from accountability. Trump supporters, however, argue that he is simply trying to clean up a corrupt and politicized justice system. They believe that the investigations into his administration were politically motivated witch hunts, and that he has the right to appoint officials who share his views. They also argue that the dismissals and demands for information are necessary to restore order and accountability within the Justice Department. In a move that has shocked the international community, the Trump administration has frozen a significant portion of U.S. foreign aid. This decision has had immediate and far-reaching consequences for humanitarian efforts around the globe. Programs providing food, water, shelter, and medical care to vulnerable populations have been disrupted or put on hold entirely. The State Department has issued waivers for some critical programs, but the long-term impact of this decision on global stability and U.S. interests remains unclear. Critics of the move argue that it is cruel, short-sighted, and ultimately counterproductive. They point out that foreign aid is not simply charity, but a strategic investment in global stability and security. It helps to prevent the spread of disease, alleviate poverty, and promote democracy and human rights. By cutting off this aid, they argue, the U.S. is creating a vacuum that will be filled by rivals like China and Russia, who will use their aid to advance their own interests at the expense of the United States. The decision to freeze foreign aid is closely linked to the growing influence of Elon Musk within the Trump administration. Musk, who has been appointed to a nebulous role overseeing government efficiency, has long been a vocal critic of foreign aid. He has called USAID, the U.S. agency responsible for administering foreign aid, a criminal organization and advocated for its closure. Building walls, breaking bridges, immigration and Latin American relations. Trump's hardline stance on immigration has been a defining feature of his presidency, and his second term has seen a further escalation of these policies. Most recently, the administration revoked protections for 300,000 Venezuelans living in the U.S., making them vulnerable to deportation. This move is part of a broader crackdown on immigration that includes increased border security, stricter enforcement of immigration laws, and limitations on asylum claims. While Trump supporters see these actions as fulfilling his campaign promises and regaining control of the border, critics view them as inhumane and potentially harmful to U.S. relations with Latin America. They argue that these policies are causing unnecessary suffering, undermining the U.S.'s moral standing in the world, and driving a wedge between the U.S. and its neighbors to the south. The revocation of protections for Venezuelan migrants has been met with particular condemnation, with many seeing it as a betrayal of those fleeing a humanitarian crisis. The move has further strained relations with Latin American countries already angered by Trump's rhetoric and policies on immigration. Relations with Canada, historically one of the United States' closest allies, have become increasingly strained during Trump's second term. The imposition of tariffs on Canadian goods has been met with anger and disappointment in Ottawa. Canadian leaders have accused the Trump administration of betraying a decades-long partnership and undermining the integrated North American economy. Beyond trade, Trump's demand that Canada be annexed as the 51st state has further inflamed tensions. This proposal, which Trump has repeatedly floated, has been met with disbelief and derision in Canada. Canadian officials have made it clear that such a move is completely unrealistic and deeply offensive. The fact that Trump continues to raise it suggests a fundamental misunderstanding of Canadian sentiment and a disregard for the importance of the U.S.-Canada relationship. These tensions have real consequences for both countries. The U.S. and Canada share a long, undefended border and cooperate closely on a wide range of issues, from defense and security to trade and environmental protection. The current state of the relationship threatens to undermine this cooperation and harm both countries' interests. In a move that has sent shockwaves through Latin America, President Trump has threatened to take control of the Panama Canal. Citing security concerns related to Chinese investment in ports near the canal, Trump has suggested that the U.S. may be forced to intervene to protect its interests. This threat represents a major escalation of tensions with Panama and a direct challenge to the Panama Canal Treaty, which granted Panama control of the canal in 1999. The Panama Canal is a vital waterway for global trade, connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. The U.S. has a long and complicated history with the canal, having built it in the early 20th century and controlling it for much of the century. The decision to relinquish control of the canal to Panama was controversial at the time, but it was ultimately seen as a necessary step in repairing relations with Latin America and acknowledging Panama's sovereignty. Trump's threat to take back control of the canal has been met with condemnation from Panama and much of the international community. Critics argue that it is a blatant attempt to assert U.S. dominance in the region and that it violates international law. They warn that such a move would have disastrous consequences for U.S. relations with Latin America and could even lead to military conflict. Elon Musk's growing influence within the Trump administration has raised concerns about potential conflicts of interest and the outsized role of private individuals in government. Musk's appointment to oversee government efficiency has given him unprecedented access to sensitive information and decision-making processes. While his supporters point to his business acumen and innovative thinking, critics worry about his lack of government experience and potential for self-dealing. One of the most concerning aspects of Musk's influence is his access to the federal payment system. This access, which is unprecedented for someone in his position, has raised alarms among ethics experts who worry about the potential for abuse. Additionally, Musk's public statements about USAID and his advocacy for its closure raise questions about his influence on government policy and his commitment to the public good. The situation raises broader questions about the role of private individuals in government and the potential for conflicts of interest when business leaders are given significant power and influence. It also highlights the importance of transparency and accountability in government, particularly when individuals with significant financial interests are involved. As President Trump's second term unfolds, the world watches with a mixture of fascination and trepidation. His unorthodox approach to governance, characterized by bold pronouncements, a disdain for traditional diplomacy, and a willingness to upend long-standing norms, has created a climate of uncertainty and instability on the global stage. While his supporters applaud his willingness to challenge the status quo and put America first, his critics fear that his actions are undermining global stability, damaging alliances, and eroding America's moral standing in the world. Only time will tell what the ultimate legacy of Trump's presidency will be. However, one thing is certain: his actions will have a profound and lasting impact on the United States and the world for years to come. The world is grappling with a global pandemic, climate change, and a host of other complex challenges. How the U.S. navigates these challenges in the years ahead will depend in no small part on the choices made during these tumultuous times. The stakes are high, and the world is watching.